Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show / RPG Show. We're kind of
something, right?
I was thinking this morning I need to change that to RPG Show, and I will at some point be doing that. So just you wait.
Oh,
just you wait.
I did a name
YouTube.
test of one of the names we've been talking about, and the group I tested it on, they said they loved it.
Which one? Which name? West Marches On?
I'm going to say it. Yes, they loved it.
Well, no, for those of you not in our Discord, we've been talking about names, and
don't take it.
Yeah,
Jerks.
well, whatever. People take a name. But no, I was like, West Marches On is pretty cool. I don't know how relatable it is to RPGs, but I like it because I think it's just clever and fun. So that was one of them.
Because it's the best type of RPG.
Oh,
I did a deep dive before we even get into anything, and you'll love this, and Worlds Without Number, because I know you love that quite a bit. I did a deep dive a day ago, and I was watching Ben's channel where he did went through it, and I'm just like, this book is just so good.
So I bought Worlds Without Number strictly for the world building aspect to it, because I'm like, oh man, even if I don't play this is a great resource. Then I read the RPG side of it, and I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I want to play this so bad. And I am torn because I was talking with my Dungeon Crawl Classics group, and they're very keen on playing other systems.
Take a drink.
Thank you. And I was saying, hey, when we're done with this, I really want to try Worlds Without Number. And then my friend Katie was like, oh, I was really hoping we'd like try that Invisible Sun game you keep talking about. And I'm like, oh, you did it. You like, now I'm conflicted. I was like, I want to play both of them.
That I can't choose between.
Yeah. So speaking of Worlds Without Number, he made there's a Kickstarter now for, I think, Cities Without Number. And it's a cyberpunk version of the game. So if you want, Stars Without Number is the sci-fi version. Worlds Without Number is the fantasy version, and now he's got a cyberpunk Kickstarter going on right now.
And he did something with gods, because I know Ben had mentioned there was a second book. Yeah. So if he said if he wanted something that was more superhero-like or big, powerful character-like, that he said the second book was a good one. Godbound, that was it. Yeah.
Which sounds Kevin really good Crawford. Too. Yeah, I bought that one too. And I actually bought the Atlas of the Latter Earth. I kickstarted that too. Because Kevin Crawford, who's the author of all of this, he really likes World Without Number. And I think he used a lot of his own tables to craft a fantasy world to play in. So the Atlas of the Latter Earth, when you play Worlds Without Number, the default setting is the Latter Earth. And it reminds me of a Numenera in that there has been like eons of stuff beforehand, and you're kind of always discovering stuff.
It's very Jack Vance inspired, right?
Yes. Yeah, Dying Earth kind of stuff, yeah. So the Atlas of the Latter Earth is you could pick a specific faction or a city, or you could play in that whole thing, all kinds of maps. It was a really good book. So,
well, what got me going is we keep talking and teasing about the cliff, and then I'm talking, there's all these other people talking about building games and RPGs and these books, and then I dove into that, and I was just like, it'd be kind of cool to take some of those different world building books that are known to be really good, that one being one of them, and then say, okay, we know we have this setting that we like, and we know we're handcrafting every piece of the setting, so normally we don't need prompts even because the creativity is flowing so well in that. But what would it look like if we did use these tools, and then use a couple of different tools to see how the world comes out? Does it come out very similar? Does it come out very different when you're using these different world building tools with a set example that you're going to use it on? I thought, that'd be kind of a cool little
be an interesting test. Of type. Yeah. So much so it's like, I want you to, like, me and Lucian have the same resources, but we don't talk to each other, but we each create our own kind of thing. And then you come together and you see how similar is it, because we're rolling on the same tables, or we're being inspired from the same tools, but I bet they would be vastly different.
Yeah.
Not trying to connect it to the cliff, but speaking of the cliff, I have been reading about hex flowers, which is a unique way to roll on some tables. And I think a hex flower would be really interesting to do on the cliff, because you could have these hex flowers, and then you have a higher percentage of falling than you do climbing up. So like the initial descent is probably a lot easier, but then when you want to get up to something, it's like the rolling gets a little more difficult. And
and we're gonna coin the term, instead of when you do a hex crawl, you're gonna do a hex climb or a hex fall.
A hex fall.
Yes.
Hex fall,
TM
everyone
trademark.
dies. That's the name of our new podcast. Let's do that.
Yeah, there's so many cool things in it.
Hello,
I'm still
everybody.
working on art for it, and trying to find that perfect starter image of how do you encapsulate that thing that we want everybody to go and know what we're talking about with just the image. Like you just put the image in front of them and they immediately know, oh, this is the world we're going to be in. This is going to be cool.
I really wish I was an artist sometimes, in a visual art sense. And I do draw and dabble here and there, but like the people that can see it in their head and then just start, I'm very envious of those people and the skills that
they're my superheroes. They're so cool.
It's crazy.
That talent is awesome. All right, back to a show. We're doing a podcast show, right?
Podcast
what we're
show.
doing here today?
I was looking up Cities Without Number to see how it's doing because this literally just launched. Kevin,
I want that because I think that's a cool way to do. Just reading through his stuff and then applying his idea to a cityscape, a giant, massive megapolis. Oh, that'd be so good. Because he doesn't just put in, it's not just like, oh, there's like random, oh, you get mountains and things in this. He's like, here's ruins and here's churches and here's organizations and here's, there's like all this stuff in there that not the land, but also what's in the land, what lives in the land, what's happening, it's all of it. It's just so good.
You would love the cover of Cities Without Number. Now, I'm not the biggest cyberpunk kind of person. Like I like cyberpunk enough. I don't think I've ever really wanted to play a cyberpunk game.
Really?
I'd really want to play like a sci-fi game more than
Runner?
that. Yeah, I like Blade Runner. I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know. I just kind of like it would have to be the right setting, I guess. But I like Cities Without Number. And then he says start right from the get-go, the first of this Kickstarter, it says a world of chrome and rust, and that grabbed me. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, so yeah, this is a really interesting.
Oh, you're right. The cover is cool.
Cover's dope. It's a big.
I want that
skyline. It's so
dope.
Cool. So it's at $250,000 right now and 24 days to go. It's a cyberpunk cool thing. So check it out. Speaking of Kickstarter. Zine Quest is this month. There are lots of Zine Quests running around. One of the notable ones that I was interested in was the Electrum. I can't remember it now. The Electrum Archives, I think is what it is. The Electrum Archive. So Emil Bovin, who is from Finland or Sweden or Norway, somewhere up there. He is releasing an entire RPG, but it's only in zines. So he's going to do, like, it's not released yet in its entirety, but it will be these little zines and stuff. And the first one was called Orn, and it was the first issue, and it's like the basic rules. And you can get this all on itch as well. And the second one is called Titanport, and I think it's a city in this world. So you have the basic rules, you have the city that kind of will expand upon those rules. Cool. And I like this I like this idea. I think it's kind of cool to like do a slow release and like really play test every little thing. And then, I know it's nice to have it all in one book, but it's also kind of cool to get these like, oh, I'm interested in this now. And the art's really cool. He does the art. It's super awesome. And that is currently on Kickstarter. They're crowdfunding issue 2, which is Titanport. So I would totally check it out. I'll put a link cool. in the doobly-doo, but also in our chat.
Genre RPG is it?
It's fantasy.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Fantasy.
For sure. Here, I'll send you a link, Lucian. I'm sorry. Put it in our notes there. But it's kind of like giant fantasy robots, and I don't know. It's interesting. I really am just captured by the art.
You got me.
I think it's robots. Like super cool. It's just neat. So if you're interested in that, I'd be curious what zines for Zine Quest, or Zines if you're incorrect like Lucian, that you're interested in, because I looked at a couple of these.
Magazine, so zine.
And I think also that these, less people seem to be doing Zine Quest because of frustrations with Kickstarter. And then last year they moved Zine Quest out of February to something else, and everyone was like upset about it. And then they were like, "Oh, we're sorry, we'll put it back." So it's kind of had this weird falling out, and it makes me wonder if there's probably going to be other stuff going on. Oh, looks like Mothership's got a sci-fi horror one shot. That's kind of fun. So check out
Mothership's
Zine Quest.
awesome.
Monty Cook
Very cool.
has a big game going on right now, or a big backer kit funding.
Yeah. Now, is this the one for existing? Because I know they have something new they're doing too right now that just launched, that for new books.
I think
Is
that's
this the
what this
backer kit
is.
one?
Yeah.
Because also I thought they were doing a reprint of something too.
No, it's all together. Yeah. So they're doing a
Okay.
reprint of the starter set and the rule book for Cipher System. But the two new books that they're working on are Rust, which is like a gunslinger kind of campaign. For Rust in Redemption, which is a gunslinger post-apocalyptic world of magic, and I don't know, it's Monty Cook, it's going to be weird. For the Cipher System. And then the other one is It's Only Magic, which is a Buffy the Vampire Slayer kind of like modern day Dresden Files magic in our real world. And that's the one that I was super interested in. So I ended up backing that, but I didn't have a copy of Cipher. And so in the editions later on, after you back it, you can get, you can order like a copy of Cipher. And so I did that as well. So I backed this to get my Only Magic book and the Cipher System as a whole, because I'm like, I have Numenera, but I don't actually have Cipher proper. Aside from PDFs, but I like physical books. But yeah, they started this whole thing where it's like, welcome to the Cipher System. And so you can get, with this Kickstarter, you can literally just get the starter set and like the Cipher rulebook. Like you don't even have to pre-purchase the adventure settings, even though it's really a Kickstarter for the adventure settings. So it's kind of it's a reprint plus is what it feels like. But they're doing very well. And we were commenting on it in Discord that Monty Cook's pledge, or their crowdfunding, is usually expensive. I think I got the Cipher book, which is going to be $70, and then the Magic book is $50. So that's $120 to get two books, and that's a lot.
Yeah, Tolos was a lot.
But I understand. I also think that Monty Cook they pay their employees well, and the quality of these books really shines, not just in physical strength and things like that, but also in the writing and the layout and stuff like that. So if you're willing to pay for that, it's awesome. And if you're not willing to pay for that, PDFs are a great resource as well. Yeah. And they're a lot cheaper. But I wanted to point out that this is happening right now. And if you're a fan of Monty Cook like I am, you should check it out.
Yeah, because they said another new book, so an anthology. They already hit the stretch goal for an anthology of adventures from a variety of genres. So I noticed in one of his tweets he had mentioned that they were going to do some more content for books that they had already released. So this must be the anthology, where they can go back, because they've released a lot of cool worlds with the Cipher System to back up the Cipher System itself. I have a bunch of them that are really good.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is you can get them
more
as
adventures
well.
For Predation would be great.
Yeah.
And then if they get one more stretch goal, 525K, which they probably will make, they'll add 2 more full-length adventures to the adventure book. So
yeah,
lots of big adventure book coming too, it sounds like. That's awesome.
Yeah, because they have those other the one I want to play now is so they have The Stars Are on Fire, Godforsaken, Claim the Sky. Claim the Sky is the superhero one. Is Stay Alive the one? They have like a primal one where you're like dinosaurs.
They have it all.
And I was like,
Predation's the
Predation.
dinosaur one.
That's the one.
Love. Yeah. I have that. Ran it at Gen Con, ran it for a couple people, ran it for Elise, who's on our channel.
Oh, yeah.
She had me run it for her group at one point too, and that's fun. That's a really good one because you get a pet dinosaur in
That
character creation. So
yes,
if you haven't
that's
if
what I
you haven't
want.
played Predation, check that one out. Highly recommend it.
All I want is a pet
It's really
dinosaur.
good. Yes,
Um,
exactly.
so cool. So yeah, and they're doing a bestiary. Like they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. It's really cool.
Here's the other cool thing, Jordan, in that character creation piece. You get a pet dinosaur, but the player to your left plays the dinosaur. And you play the dinosaur for the player to your right.
So you have your regular
each player-
character, but then you also
you have your character and another person plays your pet, but everybody has a pet dinosaur or can have a pet dinosaur.
Oh, that's fun.
That's the way I played it. And so it was like, oh, it was so good. Yeah. So you could, everybody gets to play up that, dinosaur personality with another character. And then it just adds magic to the table when you do it.
Yeah.
Very fun.
That is cool. I was going to move this around so we can talk about Goodman Games. I'll put this down here.
That would be a good one for your team that's doing Rod of Seven Parts and now into the Modron March, because I could see that cast you have brought together getting into playing each other's dinosaur pets.
Oh yeah.
God.
So
the fun that would ensue.
We played on Thursday and LB out role played me in a positive way, but I was just stumped. Like she was asking questions and she was like doing stuff and I'm like, I don't know how to answer. Like this is awesome. But it was one of those funny things where I'm like, I wish we weren't streaming live because I feel like I'm dropping the ball on creativity. But we had a good time and stuff. But no, you're right. They would love that.
So
she does.
If you invite LB to your game, she brings her A game.
In other news, Goodman Games has had their best-selling month in the company's history in January. I wonder why. That's funny. Good old Joseph Goodman himself made a YouTube video on their channel, on the Goodman Games channel on YouTube, which doesn't have a lot of followers or anything. But he basically was just like, "Hi, this is why I made the game. I wanted to introduce myself. We're a really close-knit kind of group of people that love this game. And so if you want to join in, we're always happy to have you, like, come play at our table and stuff." It was really cool. And he just kind of like very straightforward, not a flashy video to get a ton of views, but like the people that are interested in Goodman Games and kind of the fun gonzo culture they've created behind their game, I think would find a lot of value in that. So it's kind of cool to just see a guy show up and be like, "Hey, I made a game. Thanks for playing. It's going to be great."
It's going to be great.
And then we've already talked about how like Paizo sold out of 8 months worth of inventory in 2 weeks and stuff. So we have had, and then Monty Cook's Kickstarter is going crazy. Like I think everybody
couldn't find Monty Cook books. It was like all the books were out.
I posted yesterday that Paizo has a humble bundle. You can get $400 worth of PDFs for like $25. I
got that last year. They did one just like it and got them all.
So it's a good time to play games. There's lots of options, lots of stuff going around, which is
there's so much,
crazy. And then everybody's making their own system. I think Monday maybe it was yesterday, but I think Monday we're gonna get Black Flag stuff coming out, and I'm again very curious about that system.
Was it February 6th or something, or no? Maybe it was. I thought they had a date, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I thought it was yesterday, but I didn't see anything. So it might be Monday, which would be the 6th. So they're going to have some playtest information out. Again, Celeste Konowich is helping or heading that, I think, and she's awesome and writes really cool stuff.
And Ted's doing like Friday shows of material. So he's doing like a weekly Friday show, I think, on his channel. Of the Black Flag stuff,
he was saying that he was working with Celeste because they're such good friends that he's like, "Hey, you can put this on your regular channel, or like I can, we'll do it on my channel." And so I think they're partnering for just friendship and content and things like that. But and then
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. And then the Orc license, which is a lot of people in our comments and stuff, and I do want to get this straight. The Orc license is not a system, it's a license. And I think it'll operate like the OGL license, where companies can put part of their system into it, much like we did earlier. So it's like, here's a system reference document for 3.5, and then the Year Zero engine can put theirs in there. I don't know. Now that I think about it, I'm like, I don't know how much it's going to kick off, especially with the 5e rules now being in Commons, Creative Commons. But they did say that they still feel like there is a need for this. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And, you know, it's better to make it and have it and not use it than to need it and not have it, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But also, it seems like every company is making their own license because they don't want this to happen again. So I know that Free League is making theirs Year Zero license now. So instead of having this like communal thing, like the Orc license where we could all put stuff in, I don't know. We'll see. But a lot of companies, a lot of companies have signed up for it. So, you know, who knows? I don't know. But it isn't a system. It is a license that companies are allowed to put information into that then other people could use that and redistribute it, which is a lot like Creative Commons, but different because I'm a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know why it's different, but apparently it's different enough that they feel they need to do that. So lots of news. I guess we're kind of going fast through it. This was around. Have you ever heard about the Zweihander RPG?
Yeah,
so
because
I've never played this.
I'm a huge fan of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay.
Okay.
It was the game that after I found Dungeons and Dragons to be contrary in the hobby, I'm like, oh, you guys play Dungeons and Dragons, but I play Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. You know, there's always that kid that wants to play, that doesn't want to go with the mainstream cool. It's like, I'm going to find the offset. So I found that, and it was the artwork that was more gritty because it's a grim, dark world. And I flipped through that book in, you know, I think it was a Walden bookstore in a mall. I think is when I found it, like when I'm, you know, like 10 or 12 or 13 or whatever. And I'm flipping through it. I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. The necromancers and the artwork, and it's all like in your face. I'm like, this is the game I want to play. So then when Zweihander came up with the creator for that came up, he wanted to build a game that was very similar to that kind of rules, but it was his own game. And he went out and did it. So I followed it from when he had mentioned he was going to start it, and, you know, all the way to release. And I have it, and I bought it, and the more stuff they've done with it. And I love the game. I think Zweihander's awesome.
Yeah. So it's, well, this is sad, I guess. And I'm not sure the future of it, but the publisher of that RPG is Andrews McMeel Publishing. And they have officially shut down their RPG division. And I didn't know a lot about this because I'm like, what publisher is this? I was like, this isn't, you know, Free League. This isn't like the Monty Cook. I didn't understand what they were making, but they have the Zweihander RPG. And then they were also making a couple of other 5e books, specifically the 5th edition Neverland and Wizard of Oz book, which are back on my shelf. I should have brought them out I could show them on the screen. But those books are very good. And they're just written by a guy, and then he went to this publishing company, and they, you know, published it. That's what publishers do. So that's also in their repertoire. So I would encourage you to go get those, because I don't know when you'll be able to get them again. What is his name? The author of this? It's
the Daniel D. Fox is guy I remember because he's on Twitter. He's the creator, kind of. Yeah, but and it won an Any award-winning creator, Zweihander Fantasy Horror TTRPG, published by Andrews McMeel. He's a prolific poster on Twitch, and I also followed him quite a bit because he kind of ran the crusade to get rid of Trove and all of these places that you could get free PDFs, because he was a huge advocate
or pirated PDFs, we should say,
against the pirating of you know, tabletop role-playing material. It was like, there's plenty of places you can get it. He was giving out free play sets, giving out rules that you can play most of the game without having to pay. But when you're really diving into it, you really should pay kind of the company who created it. And that was his, you know, his crusade. And that's, I've always, you know, kind of kept up with him. And it was, I'm surprised that they're not doing any more role-play stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen if they just wanted to get out. I did read an article that said that B. Dave Walters had something in the works with them, and that's why we're finding out that the RPG division is being shut down, is because he had a meeting with them, and then they were like, by the way, we're canceling this project and every other RPG thing we've ever been trying. And it's like, what? So I don't know the specifics, but apparently they're canceling it. But I wanted to point out the Andrew Kolb Neverland and Oz books, very, very good, especially that Oz book. I just finished reading it a week ago, and it's
here's Lori Abkaminer, not true. Andrews McNeil will continue to be publisher of the most excellent Colby's Neat RPG books, which notice are Neverland and Oz,
Yeah.
and likely more. Although you should feel free to snap them up anyway, of course. She's answering out to somebody who's saying you better get these now or they're going to be gone.
Yeah, so I don't
She's
know
saying, no,
because
they're going to keep publishing them.
people are
I don't know.
saying, like, I feel like there's some weird information because somebody was told that I think it was B. Dave Walters, but yeah. So maybe I'm wrong, but boy, Neverland and Oz, they're really cool. I would recommend them.
Well, never wait, because anything could happen. And if there's a good game out there and you want to get it and you
Yeah.
have the means to get it, don't
And
wait.
boy, if you're on Amazon, these books are $20. It looks like there's 10
Wow.
used for $12.50. And they're stitch bound. They're really good. It's not like it's a low quality product. So no PDF with it though. I don't think I have a
Yeah,
PDF
I need
of
PDFs
Oz,
with my
and
games. I really hope
like
that becomes the
PDFs,
trend
yeah.
of I buy the hard book, but give me the PDF too, because I kind of need both. But I get it. I understand the whole problems, but
Yeah.
I wish they'd overcome it.
Keys from the Golden Vault. Do you know more about this than I do? You want to talk about it?
Well, no, but it's like, you know what it feels like to me is like the Candlekeep book that came out. Like I was lukewarm on Candlekeep, and then even as I heard more of it, I was like, okay, it's not really a book that I'm really want. And I always felt this one was kind of the same. I like the idea of heists, but I never thought I needed a heist book from Wizards of the Coast to help me build a heist, because even if I did it, I might run a heist adventure, but I would never run like 5 or 6 or 7 or like a string of heist books if that's how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
So this one was not even really on my radar. And, so I haven't really kept up too much on it, but, they're trying to push it, and it's the next book that's out. It'd be the first book of 2023.
Yeah.
I like what you had said is, it probably makes sense. It's a tie into the movie a little bit. Heist
It is
kind of movie.
I think the idea is that people will go see the movie, which comes out March or April. And then a lot of competition though. I was looking like the Super Mario Brothers movie comes out around the same time. And I was like, okay. We'll see. Like a lot of whether movies do good or bad is like,
do you remember
what are you up against?
Super Mario Brothers movie?
I do. I was in theaters. 9-year-old Jordan, very excited to go see that movie.
So sad.
It was really bad. But Yoshi was in it. We were excited to see Yoshi. So Keys from the Golden Vault is their new book. It's an anthology book, so it's 13 adventures. They're all centered around a heist. And yeah, how they're tying it in is when the writers for the movie, the writer-directors, came to Wizards, they were like, hey, we kind of have this idea, but we need these aspects of the Forgotten Realms to pan out so that we can have the movie we kind of have in mind. And one of them was we need a prison. And a lot of the Forgotten Realms scholars at Wizards were just like, do we have like a prison? Like, I don't think we do. Like, there's not a central government to really have like a prison. So they invented Revel's End, which is this like tower prison in the northern Sword Coast, surrounded by ice and things like that. And it's a cool piece of like, topography that they put in, this prison out in the middle of nowhere. But Revel's End was created for the movie, and then it made an appearance in the Icewind Dale book, and it's making an appearance in this book where you have to free somebody from Revel's End for Keys from the Golden Vault. So that's the movie tie-in. I don't know if it'll go beyond that, just like there's a prison. We'll see. It's kind of funny that it's one of these, like, I like it when they use existing stuff or they expand on existing stuff. And this was straight up like, yeah, let's just put a prison here, ka-thunk. And it's like, okay. A good example of what they did where they expanded upon stuff is Eltur in Forgotten Realms always had this giant ball of light in the sky above it. And then it wasn't until Descent into Avernus that we learned that giant ball of light was actually like a prison holding captive something for a long time. And so when they take something and they expand upon the lore and use it in a unique creative way, I find that more interesting than this, where it's like, we needed a prison, so we made a prison. Here you go. Maybe that's just a Jordan rant, but we'll see. But I am excited a new trailer came out for that movie, and Zastam is in it, and he's the evil lich emperor of Thay. He's not an emperor; he's a Tharch, I think, but he leads the Red Wizards of Thay and is in control of Thay. The necromancer Zastam, who is probably a lich now. He is a lich, I think. It'll be interesting to see that. I got to make a Zastam video, is what I'm hearing. So.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Get up there.
You could do like a movie video too. Something after you watch the movie, come home and make a video.
I want to
reaction or.
I don't necessarily want to do a reaction, but I like the idea of like. There's a channel out there called New Rockstars that does trailer breakdowns and stuff, and they've been doing trailer breakdowns for the D&D movie, and it's just funny to be like, do you like their information is very limited, where they do some Google searches and they come up with stuff, but it'll be interesting to see, because I mean, how I've been living and eating the Forgotten Realms for how long now, and to be able to go and watch a movie and be like, oh that's castle this, or this is so cool, like it'll be kind of neat. So
you could nerd out on it for sure. Yeah.
For a long time.
Good.
So we'll see. Awesome. I think it'll be really cool. That's what other news do we have?
Well, I think it was funny. I kind of put it a tiny bit in the notes, is that it seemed like it wasn't so much news as everybody just kind of sharing, all the different companies sharing how and what they're creating new. It's like all their new books that are coming out, all the new worlds they're building, all the new community programs that you can be a part of if you want to make your own stuff. That's been like the big push over the end of January and moving into February. I think it's just this explosion. We're just going to keep seeing all of these. Here's our like OGL style license you can use to create your game in our world or our system. I think we're going to continue to see, and a lot more. It seems like new books and new systems. We're at the start of that explosion, I think, of, hey, we're going to get new books for different systems than just 5e compatible books, right? Which I think is that's awesome. I love the idea that we're going to get that kind of stuff. And I just think here's the beginning of it. Like, you can market February is the month where you start to see it. We might even start seeing Kickstarters come out that's no longer just 5e compatible Kickstarter. It's going to be like, this is a Cypher system compatible,
or built for your favorite system,
Savage Worlds, or this is agnostic system.
Well, so I have a question for you. Do you like system neutral adventures or settings where it's like, here's the basis, but I'm not going to give you any of the like monster stats? You have to kind of come up with that alone. It's a little more work, but do you like stuff like that? Or do you want this?
Yeah, I judge all of those kinds of things, not on what system it's in, but how it grabs me with the hook. Like that first sentence they say, like, you know, like you said, you know, welcome to the Chrome and Rust City. You know, what is your hook? What is your artwork draw my eye to? And then what's the thing that you're like, Wild Sea, you know, that grabbed me. I didn't care what system it was in. I'm in. Like, I'll learn the system, or I'll adapt it to whatever my game I'm playing and what my party is doing. So I don't ever think I just think about what's the cool idea behind it, and that's how you get my money.
Yeah. I'm torn because for a long time I said that I love system neutral stuff because I'll find an equivalent, or I'll make a monster. But I realized a lot of that was I have access to a lot of monster books for 5th edition D&D, and I was always translating something to 5th edition D&D, and it was always like a fantasy-esque to a fantasy game. Hot Springs Island is a good point, but even with Hot Springs Island, I ran into some problems, and then I was on Reddit and I found that somebody had made 5th edition stats for all of the monsters in Hot Springs Island. And I was like, thank you. That's what I needed. And it was at that point that I realized, I'm like, I love system neutral, but it's a lot more work when they don't give you the monsters, you know? And really it comes down to monsters, because if you're a playable class, I can look in the class book, the player's handbook, and I know what you can do. But when it comes to the custom spells and magic items and stuff, it is nice to have like, oh, this is part of the system that you're in. And if you're buying an adventure, that's probably something that you want, as opposed to coming up with my own adventure. I don't know. So it's interesting that we go in this route, and, you know, there's a reason that Monty Cook is making 5e Tolus and Cypher Tolus and not just Tolus, figure it out for yourself version. So I wonder how much extra work this is going to put on RPG writers and things like that. Like,
yeah, I did the same thing when I did the Seeking Revenor campaign. And I thought, well, I'm going to save myself time by grabbing some adventures from AD&D, and I'll just move them over and I'll just do the conversion of some of the things that need to convert. And really, I ended up spending as much time doing the convert part as I would have if I had just built the adventure part or that part of the world myself. And so I didn't save myself time. It was like I thought I was going to save myself time, but the minute I did, oh wait, I've got to convert, like you said, all the creatures, figure out what they are, what's equivalent, what's going to be the treasures in there that are equivalent, what's the gold value that's going to be equivalent if it matches, because AD&D could be different than what my world was going to be a little bit. So sometimes you think that you can start with something else and it's going to save you time, but you spend more time fixing that thing to work than if you had just created it wholesale.
Square peg in a round
hole. So I think it's a hard, yeah. And then other times it probably isn't that way. Sometimes you probably do save yourself. Sometimes I think for you, like your Rod of Seven Parts was an old adventure that you brought into 5e. So how much did you have to do there versus Hot Springs Island, and you brought it into 5th edition rules?
Yeah.
You know, there's, you know, sometimes it might save you time, but don't think it's always going to save you time. Sometimes it can cause you more work than you thought. Be ready for that trap.
And, I fell into it. That's a great example, because Rod of Seven Parts, or even the Great Modron March that I'm running now, I'm really using it as a skeleton. And because they're essentially both D&D, like, yes, monsters that are in 2nd edition that don't appear in 5th edition are a little difficult, but at the same time, I kind of just, I you know, Control F and I find a monster that I'm like, oh, this'll fit, and I can call it that other monster and we'll just play with that, and that's really good. And that's I would say that it's a lot easier. Also, my familiarity with Planescape and things like that make it a lot easier to run. But like I said, with Hot Springs Island, when I first started that, I was like, okay, it's a monster. Well, what is it? How hard should this be?
How many fire salamander?
How many hit points should it have? Like, I don't even know, you know? And it really has opened my eyes about system neutral stuff, where I kind of, a lot of OSR stuff, I'll look at monsters. I'm always going back to monsters, but I'll look at monsters and I'll see, oh, you have 8d6 hit die. I know that you're a little tougher than a 2d6 monster. But with Hot Springs Island, I never knew how difficult a monster was supposed to be. And it was kind of interesting like that, where I'm like, and when I got the actual, or not the actual stats, but the stats somebody statted out, a lot of those were like, are salamanders supposed to be this easy? Like, I'm surprised. I thought that they were more difficult in my mind. So I don't know. It's interesting.
And that's like having a donut, like 2 different types of donuts, and you're bringing them together. But if you were to try to do that, like, I'm going to bring it into Cypher system.
Exactly.
You're trying to take a donut and make it into a pie, or it's like a totally different food almost. Like, that difference is even bigger than, you know, sort of D&D, early period D&D into late period D&D. That almost works, but there's work to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, like,
going
what if I was trying to
going
do
to Savage Worlds, or going to, you know, whatever.
What if I was trying to run Rod of Seven Parts using the Cypher system? I have no idea. I mean, granted, I'm not super familiar with Cypher, but that feels like not something I would want to do. Yet Tolus is there, and I'm sure I could, like, borrow a lot of that. So, boy, I don't know. I was really excited for system neutral stuff back in the day, but the more that I'm thinking about it, I think the reason I'm paying money is so that somebody does the hard work for me when I'm buying an adventure. And I can buy a book and read it and be inspired and use a lot of those things, just like I'm reading something else and being like, oh, that's kind of cool. But I still love Hot Springs Island, don't get me wrong.
I need usable tools in your book.
And Hot Springs Island does give usable tools, but I think the best tool you can have is, here are monster stat blocks, because I can make up DCs all day. How hard is it to climb that mountain? I don't know. Let's roll
you know what they need is like a scale,
check.
Like one block. Like, oh, if you're going to use this for 5e, here's an example of one creature, and then here's what it would look like. So now you can take that as your scale for everything else. You're like, oh, you're going to do this in Cypher system. Here's your one creature comparison. and now you can scale everything else based
Yeah.
on that because you got one good example of how it should work, and you're like, oh, okay, that
I
makes
just want
total sense
monsters
now.
to have, if I do a system neutral in the future,
How tough
I
are they?
I want monsters to be like on a scale of 1 to 10. And it's like
Yeah,
1, it's like this is really easy, it blows over. 10, it's like super difficult. And
it will
then
kill your party.
based on, you're like, "Oh, what a cute little bunny. Oh my gosh, that's a 7 bunny." Like, and it's like, okay, it doesn't look intimidating, but it can when you start fighting
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
I
these
think
stats
that would
will
help me, but a lot of system neutral stuff I've seen doesn't necessarily have that. So I don't know. The OSR movement is kind of interesting. I was listening to a podcast. I actually put a question into this podcast and they read it and they were talking about it, where we're getting so many OSR systems and things like that, that they're not truly compatible with each other. And we're kind of getting this weird like OSR where everybody's doing something slightly different and claiming
OSR
innovation.
spaghetti.
And I'm wondering if we're going to get that later on where it's like, oh, so WWE is not punk rock asks, how is it converting to Hot Springs to DCC? I would say a lot easier because DCC stat blocks are more simplified. I had already run the adventure, but I also went online and Googled and I found somebody had converted every monster to Dungeon Crawl Classics. And so I took that document and I was able to run the game. There you go. So
thank you, person on internet who did that for you.
And
Whatever
it's
your
just,
name is,
but
thank
that's the people who love these systems. They're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah. But you're right. Like I don't know. It's interesting.
That was my tweet I put out this week. Monty Cook, they had said, hey, we want to do a poll. What's your favorite VTT that you're using out there, virtual tabletop? And I was like, Roll20 is my favorite. And my dream job is to create Roll20 accessories and character sheets and rule sets and compendiums in Roll20 for all of the Monty Cook catalog. Like every game you guys put out, I want it to be my job that I create the stuff so people can play it on Roll20. That's all I want. And I got a like from Monty Cook. I'm like, yes, please. Yes,
that's cool.
I want that job. We were talking about it after our show last week. We were talking about creating character sheets and how hard is it. And I went through it and it was pretty tough. And I was just like, but man, when you have that as an aid to your brand new players and your DM who can just go in and say, here's my compendium. Let me grab these monsters. Let me put a token on there. It already has those stats. It has the magic item. It has the rules if somebody needs to look something up. It has the character sheet that does the math for you for, yes, you can select that at first level or second level or third level, or, whatever. That is such a game changer for getting more people into the hobby. Is like, I want that to be my job. Like that, my legacy is I could look back and say, I created the whole catalog of Monty Cook's games in Roll20. That'd be awesome. Roll20, hire me. I'd love to do that. Show me how to do it too, because I don't actually know how to do any of it.
They probably want to hire somebody who already understands cascading style sheets.
That's the problem that I never get. I don't know how to do it, so I can't ever be the one that does it. But I want to do it. Like, doesn't that mean anything that I want to do it?
I mean, it does. So, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I'm really curious to the future of Kickstarter adventures. And if it is like, oh my gosh, this adventure's so good, we're going to release it for all of these different systems, because in a way, it was nice to know that this was the most popular system. So you could just gear towards that. Unless you were like a third party and you're like, I want to make this adventure for this system. But even
are we at the
my
time
Oz
too?
And Neverland book are 5e. And I feel like I could easily adapt them to an OSR, but I don't think I can adapt them to Cypher, like at all. So
yeah, that's different. OSR is like D&D, so that's
yeah, there's a reason that it works.
Makes sense.
So.
Yeah, I wonder if we're at that time now where it's no longer hard. Like when you find a new player who wants to understand or play role-playing games, right now, every person I bumped into like that, D&D is the game they want to play because that's the one they've heard of. Yeah. That's the one that they're in, that they're slightly interested. They don't know if they're going to like it or not, but hey, it'd be cool if I could find somebody that could run me through it so I can see if I really like it or not. I wonder if this is the turning point where it's not D&D is the game that everybody wants to play. It could just be a whole random, like the person could come up to you, oh, you play role-playing games and you'll run a game. Could you run this system for me that I've heard of? And you're like, oh, you like that system? Sure, let me tell you all about this system.
Or you're just like I've never even heard of your weird Argentina RPG.
Yeah. Kids on bikes? That's what you want to play? Yes.
So good.
How do we do that? Let's do it. So I wonder if we're getting closer to like the stranglehold of everybody wants to play Dungeons and Dragons. Like every Twitch show live stream is a Dungeons and Dragons show. Can we finally get to it's Pathfinder games and it's Cypher games and it's, Free League games and it's Modifius games and it's Savage World games and it's, all these other systems or whatever.
I think one of the defining moments will be this book release, Keys of the Golden Vault. If it does,
I think it's going to tank.
I think it's going to tank too. But if it does not do well, I think we're going to see a lot more people playing, because this is a new book and it's not solo adventures, but it's like shorter adventures. This is not prime
centric.
Well, this is prime for streamers, where it's like, okay, guys, we're going to do like 4 episodes. We're going to play through this. It's going to be awesome. People will watch it because everyone's Googling Keys of the Golden Vault, but I don't know anyone who's even buying this book. And they're out there. Don't get me wrong. There are people who are going to buy it, I'm sure, but it's this is an interesting time. Yeah. So
I think the boycott is still real at this point. Yeah. I think this one tanks hard, but it's a DM book. It's an anthology book. I don't think those were the books that ever did
anthology
really
books
well.
Never did very well. Yeah.
They're always the ones that are at the lower, and this one's even going to be lower than that. I think this is going to be and that's, for all the writers and artists that work on that book. Hey, sorry that it's the timing and what happened and what's going on in the community and that stuff. Cause I know you guys work hard on stuff and your creativity, but I just think this one's going to tank.
Yeah. It could be the best product ever. But people aren't going to see it for the right or wrong reasons. Who knows, but people won't see it. But
yeah.
But if it is really good, I think it'll stand the test of time and
And do we know what the next book is already? Cause they announced all their books, but I didn't know if they told us what the next one is.
I think it's
I have to go back through our notes.
Well, I think it's the
because we get the
Phandelver
one
book. I think it's the Phandelver expansion book.
Oh,
that like expands that starter set thing into kind of a full.
Not the Planescape book.
Planescape is the end of the year. Yeah.
Okay.
That's December.
They might
or early 2024. We'll see.
So. If they want to get some excitement back, they might want to switch that around a little. Get that Planescape back out.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know. Well, I'm going to talk about games, I guess. I did not run.
Don't let me force you. If you don't want to talk about games, Jordan.
I want to. I think this is funny that you wrote the word Gith in our notes, and it wants to auto-translate it to goth, and that just cracks me up for some reason.
One day Google will know what Gith is.
So we did not have a Dungeon Crawl Classics because one of my players, it was his birthday, so we all went to his birthday instead, which was really fun. And I found out that in my town, there are adult go-kart, like, you can go like 45 miles an hour in these go-karts. And it's like NASCAR racing. And that's what he wanted to do for his birthday. So we dressed up like Mario characters. I had a Yoshi head and we raced. And it was
life-size Mario Kart.
So fun. It was really fun. So that's what I did instead of play games. But I have been writing on my D12 fantasy RPG that I've been working on. And I've been pseudo calling it Tolv because I wanted a fun name for it. I made a logo. And if you subscribe to my Patreon, I put up the rules there. But I was working on backgrounds and skills and like what kind of background, how do I want backgrounds to fit into this game? And it's been a lot of fun, and I made a fun logo, I feel. So I've been working on that for a little bit, and still have not play tested it outside of just Jordan, throwing numbers at a sack of hit points. But it's been fun. It's been a fun little project. I like it a lot. And then I ran Great Motor on March.
I have something that ties into that, but keep going.
Oh, okay. Well, and then Great Motor on March is going on, and our players went to the gate town to Gehenna, which is called Torch. And this was something I wanted to bring up, is that D&D Beyond crashed during our live stream. Nobody could log on and get to their character sheets. And so while we're playing in the middle of combat, my players were making up numbers. They're like, I think I have a +10 to that roll. I'm not sure. And I was like, this is so frustrating. And we talked about it where we're like, I don't know. Like, this is weird. Like, this is a weird situation we're in where nothing is stored locally. So when it's down, it's just gone and we don't have it anymore. So then when it came back up, which was, I want to say like 30 or 40 minutes later, everyone like frantically downloaded a PDF of their character sheet because you can do that in D&D Beyond. But food for thought, I guess, is that it was really interesting that we were like, wow, we are really tied to this when we shouldn't be. Like, I should have my character.
In our game.
So, oh yeah,
we played Thursday.
You played
night.
Thursday nights too. Yeah,
yeah. So we play in Roll20. Now I have my character sheet using the Roll20 character sheet, and I have everything in it. I've done all the macros, all the stuff. I've added in any ability that wasn't in the base, because all you get is SRD stuff in their character sheet. So I add in all my abilities for my multi-classing character. But our other people have loved D&D Beyond so much that they have been rolling their stuff in D&D Beyond, and there's a plugin that lets you click on stuff in D&D Beyond, and then it pushes it to Roll20 so they can use it, just like you said, for anybody that doesn't understand that. And then mid-game, their character sheets are gone. They can get to the compendium rules.
Yeah.
They can get to whatever, but Curse is down, D&D Beyond is down, and then there was something else that was down that didn't seem to be quite related, but that part of the website is just down and inaccessible. So they were like, hey, can you make a dex saving throw? And do you remember what's your dex save? And he's like, I don't know.
Yep.
It's like, well, I don't know.
Isn't that crazy? Like, it was eye-opening to be like, wow, we should not be this tied to this, but we are, and this is kind of what they want. And that's the trouble. Backup. Yeah, that's the trouble that you have with a service like that. And I'll be honest, like, I don't have a backup. I wouldn't even think about it. Like, if I was playing,
so convenient.
So I don't know, but it really made me happy that I was playing with pen and paper at the table for like Dungeon Crawl Classics and stuff, like, and how I really like that. I don't know, there's something tactile about it, and having your thing in front of you, and phones away and stuff like that, and people just focusing not on a computer. So
yeah,
that
was interesting. Yeah, Thursday night is when that happened.
Yeah, it was that was fun. So I ran through that. Our friend Milestone 20 said that the next book is the Bigby Presents Giants book. So it's kind of like the Fizzband's Dragon book, but it's going to be about giants.
Player options, so that's a good thing, because player option books sell well, so that could be good.
Yeah. But what about you, Lucian? Played any games? What's going on in the world of Lucian?
Yeah. So we have played Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which is our Thursday night game, running into what we just spoke about. We came across some Get Yankee, which were cool, but we're totally stumped because we're like, hey, dude, we're not mind flayers. What's your big deal? Why are you attacking us? We're like, we're going to have to put you down. Like, we're the murder hobos of this place.
Sorry, you probably wanted to live.
We're like cleaners. So we're like, Ack Inc. has sent in a cleaning crew of this dungeon. We just wipe everything out is all we do, So, but we're getting pretty deep into the dungeon now. We're getting to those lower levels. We think something really exciting has been hinted at. We're about to find in this level. I think there's going to be some real excitement. We spoil this anyways. We think there's a Spelljammer tie-in of some sort on this level. So we just ran into Gith, which was cool. And we got to fight them, they were pretty tough with their attack. I had 4 Gith jump my character using like a Misty Step to get to my character, surrounded me, 4 guys on the battle map, lay into me, and I was like I was at 140 hit points or 100 and something hit points, down to 2 hit points in one round. I'm like, whoa,
2 hit points.
We just got nailed. Like, yeah. So it was a pretty cool moment. And even if you think of those visual moments when something like that happens, it's just a cool, like, oh my God, this is so cool. Is my character going to die? And then my character pulls off, like all kinds of stuff to try to get out of this and get away. And the party does its thing to get over to help me. And it was just fun. I always like, that's the best part of the Dungeons and Dragons piece, when you go into it not realizing there's going to be that big of a swing all of a sudden, and your blood is pumping. You're like, oh my God, this is it. This could be it. The character could die right here. If I don't do something, if I don't figure out a way out of this is going to hurt.
Yeah, for sure.
But that was super fun, and we're having a lot of fun in that. So we're getting towards the end of it. So there's also a lot of talk about what are we going to do next. And one of the things was, we were able to throw a couple of these gith through some what we think are portals to the astral space. They weren't able to come back, and so the running joke now for our party is when this campaign's over, we're going to make characters of those gith who got thrown through the astral space, and we're going to play those guys. And we're like, God damn, that dwarf threw me through the thing. And we're going to play on from that. It's like, yeah, we'll play this. So we'll play those characters and see where it goes. So that was the joke. But what was going on this whole week, which was crazy, is AJ. I blame AJ if he's in chat this morning. He sent over to me. He said, "Hey, I'm goofing around with OpenD6 from West End Games, 1995 game." He says, "Do you want to take a look at it? Tell me what you think about it." Like, so I get this PDF, 1995 role-playing game, OpenD6. And I'm like, Jordan would love this because Jordan's into the D6 game, so he's got it.
Well, that's what I was reading too, yeah, and modeling my modular D6 off of, yeah.
So I'm going through the whole thing. I'm giving him like all my feedback on it. It's like I wanted to have this talk. I know we only have so much minutes, so it's
you're fine, whatever.
You decide how many D6 you're going to assign to your stats, and you have like 6 stats, and then they're like, so you could say, so I want to be a strong guy. I'm going to put 4 of my D6 in strength, but maybe I only put 2 of my D6 then in intelligence and so on and so on.
Yeah.
But then they say, but then there's the pip. Are you putting the pip in your D6 system that you've been thinking about? So that's a half die bonus. So you take a die and you cut it in half kind of, and you say like, you can either put a +1 somewhere, a +2 somewhere. You can have 3 +1s, and it's no longer a die that you roll. It's just a bonus that you get. So that's the pip part of the system. And then
a bonus on top of the die you roll, right?
Yeah, on top of whatever your pool is.
Yeah.
And then the wild die. Are you putting the wild die in, Jordan? Okay, so the wild die, you roll a 1 is basically like a critical fail of some sort, or a complication die of some sort.
Yeah.
Or a 6 is a re-roll, a good thing, and you roll again and you added that number.
Yeah, it's called exploding die. So if you roll a 6 on the wild die, you roll that die again and you keep adding the numbers to get like a really high number. But it also, there's optional rules in there to say the 6 could be like a critical hit, and then the player, you don't re-roll, but the player gets to say something cool. But on a 1, the DM gets to do like a GM intrusion, basically, to use Monty Cook words.
Yeah,
but
that's what I was kind of equating it to. And then they still, on top of that piece, they still had a way to do character points, which was like a re-roll mechanic of some sort, and almost like a fate point, which was another style of adding a dice or doing something that you only get per session or whatever. So there was a lot of these mechanics in there. And I was looking at this, and I sat back and I was like, this is what I typed into. I'm like, at what point does complicating your dice rolls give you what you want versus just make everything more complicated? Because I was like, at some point you start adding up a lot of points and you're trying to explain the pip system and the die system, but it did kind of make character creation a little bit easier. And I was wondering, have you tried, when you were doing your D6 system, did you do it with the straight system and not the pip part assigned? Did you do some testing without the wild die part assigned? Because in my head, something must have happened during testing that just the D6 pool wasn't enough. So we needed something that the pip gave us, right? That adding those pluses or splitting a die gave us something that the designers of that OpenD6 said, this makes it a little bit better. And then they go, what? Oh no, let's throw an exploding die on there. It'll be a different colored die than the other ones. And that added one more thing that they thought was this really puts the icing on the cake. Did you come to any of that? Like in your testing, did you see anything that was wrong with not having, not doing the pip and not doing the exploding die, that just the D6s didn't get?
Yeah. So boy, this is a big question, but
1 minute in, you go.
Yeah. 1 minute, go. So the West End Games originally created this D6 system for the Ghostbusters game they were contracted to make, the Ghostbusters role-playing game. And then later they adapted the same game for Star Wars and a bunch of other games until they came up with Open D6, which was, let's strip all of the rules and get rid of it and things like that. So when you talk about pips and you talk about the exploding die and the wild die and all that other stuff, a lot of that is like, well, the exploding die was part of I don't know, like this sci-fi setting. But it was called the Force die in Star Wars, and it operated slightly different. So that's why when you're reading this, you're actually getting all of those rules from like different systems that when you compile it onto each other, it's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. The main problem I had when I was playing the original OpenD6 system is as you level up, you get to the point where you're rolling like 15d6 to see if you can hit. And I just think that was too much to add together, which I didn't realize this until I talked to some friends, but games like Tales from the Loop, a lot of the Free League games, they use the same concept as OpenD6, but they changed the result of just count the number of sixes you get rather than adding it all up to be like, okay, I attack for a 45. Instead, you just add up the sixes and you say, okay, I got 4 sixes, success fails. And the other person is like, oh, I got 3 success fails. You win. And you're like, oh, cool, I did damage to you. So they took that system and actually did a really good job with it of making it making it faster. Because I kid you not, in the OpenD6 rules by West End Games, there comes a point where they said, hey, if you feel like you're rolling too many dice, take the average and just roll the wild die. And I'm like, well, that's dumb. So it's like, let's roll the wild die and I have a plus 45 to this. Like, that just seems dumb to me. But
and I read an article on the pool games, like, because another game that had a lot of pool stuff in it was Cyberpunk, and those type of games had big pools of D6s that you'd roll, or even Wartop table games, big D6s, lots of big things you roll. But there comes a point, I think it's like when you grab 10 or 12 of them, once you're past that, you're basically getting the average number if you're just adding the number up. Like the average number, just the law of averages happens. So that's why when they were looking at doing Powered by the Apocalypse, it switched to 2d6 plus stat, because they were controlling the variability that you were going to get versus the dice pool average coming into play later on as your pool grew and grew and grew, because your average just almost became locked into a certain area and you were never going to typically roll outside of that. Whereas the D20 was super swingy, which was, it was like that thing is super swingy compared to everything else. So I just thought it made me think of you as I'm reading through this and giving my notes and feedback to AJ, because he's looking at it for a superhero system he's building. And they have a 1 page in there in the West End book about how you could do it with superheroes. But, it wasn't a ton to it. And I was just thinking through the whole process. And I was like, I'm sure Jordan was into this too. I'll have to talk to him about the dice mechanics and the philosophy behind it. So.
Pips makes sense as you're leveling. So when I was working on this kind of a lot, I took all of I wanted to make sure that you didn't have more than 6 dice that you were ever rolling. So in my mind, I'm like, you could have a max of 4 dice in a stat, 1 die from a magic weapon, and 1 die from like a background or like a spell bonus or something. So the idea was you were never rolling more than 6 dice in a particular skill or stat. And so for me, the pips became very important, because when you would level, you might get +1. And then if you can get +2, but if you ever get +3, it merges into a new die. So that way I could have you level and get incremental bonuses, but not be like, I've got 17d6 in my strength. Like, that was just too much.
Yeah.
I will say the cool thing I didn't think about, though, is let's say you have 8d6 in your attack. The core rules suggest that if you want to take multiple actions, you subtract a d6. So I could take 1 action with 8d6, kind of really hinting that I could hit for sure. Or I could take 2 actions at 7d6, or 3 actions at 6d6, or 4 actions at 5d6. And so you, the player, get to kind of weigh back and forth. Like, I do want to take, you have to decide before you attack, but you're like, I do want to take 5 actions this round. And maybe an action is, I'm going to subtract a d6 so that I can run over there. Okay, well, now you have 5d6, but you can take 4 actions. And so I'm going to do this and this. So there are some cool aspects to it where you purposely lower your die pool in order to just do more attacks or do more things on a round.
Chance.
Yeah.
Well, and then I got into the conversation because I'm in Discord talking to him a little bit about it. And I was just like, the idea that choosing the D6, right? And at that time, it's 1995. I'm looking at that, and it dawns on me that the D6 is that dice you choose because it starts with roll top tabletop games, and they were using 6-sided dice to play war games, old war games. So the D6 has been quintessential through all of board gaming. And then you have D6s in many board games. And in the 80s and 90s, I remember my parents and stuff, the only type of dice game they like to play were things like Yahtzee, and there were these D6 style games that got put out that they like to play. So then that was a familiar dice. So if you're making a system that's going to be widely appealing, but then you say, hey, if you want to play this new person that you've never really seen this before, you need to have a 20-sided die.
Yeah.
D&D goes out on a limb and says you have to have a 20, an 8, a 12, a 4, and then a 10, or at least 2 10s.
Well,
right?
and it's before mass production too. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
I've got
before
dice
mass
right
production.
here,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like
yeah.
not a lot of people had access to these, but everybody had
Right.
access to D6s, you know?
Yeah. So what's driving that? And I'm thinking that's one piece that's driving is like, hey, you could go, and it says in Open D6, go raid your Yahtzee game
Yeah.
or go raid your Monopoly game and grab your D6s or, whatever. And that way you have the dice you need. But I'm thinking, we live in the world now with 3D printing and Kickstarter dice programs, and we could make any shape, any design, any number of
Yet
side
it's still
dice nowadays.
a little difficult to get
Will
DCC
that
dice.
change? Yeah. Will that change the landscape of the tabletop rolling playing game? Because now dice could be so accessible and people know what they are. It's like a 20-sider is not something my wife would pick up and not necessarily know about. But 10 years ago, that could have been, 15 years ago, it could be. So I feel like we're in this time that's so different than what has come before with what accessibility we have now with digital 3D printing, easily accessible. It's mainstream. It's your kids grow up knowing what dice are because it's in cartoons and things and referenced and stuff that they do. And, when they're watching all their stuff, they hear about role playing and these things. So it's all part of it. So now what do we get from that group of people moving forward that build new games and new stuff? And it was fascinating going through, and it all was generated by sitting here reading an old 1995 book that had a hand-drawn picture of David Duchovny in one of the pictures. I was laughing. Open D6 system, and it was so 95, right? It was just quintessential 90s role-playing game. It was fun.
Oh, I could talk about it all day because it's such a
So
I love that system, and I was adapting it for so long. But yeah.
And
that's cool.
One
though.
chat
really
says
cool.
D42 is definitely the answer. So we should have whatever
sure.
system we build a D42 for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. Good old AJ. I think that's our show. If we're good.
Yeah, I mean, I could keep going, like you said, but we probably shouldn't.
That's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and telling your friends about this show. And being a patron and all that and helping us out. We will be back next week with...
Actually, I will be out next week.
He'll be out next week. So Jordan will figure out something, or maybe we'll take a week off. 6-1. I don't know. We'll see.
Find out what Lex is doing. Lex can come on, I'm sure.
Yeah, he'll probably come on. He's cool. I don't know. I'll get Ted. We'll just talk about D&D.
Bring Ted on.
Or Wizards of the Coast and all that stuff. That'll be funny. But yeah, thanks guys for watching. We'll see you next week on another episode of the Saturday RPG show. Bye.